This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
I've been a participant in some of the most insidious lies and witnessed to deeds that no crazed man could imagine. I spent years watching you from my lofty position to know that you were the one I could trust. And why did you lie to me? There still exist some secrets which should remain secret. Truths that people are just not ready to know. Who are you to decide that? The world's reaction to such knowledge would be far too dangerous. Dangerous? You mean in the sense of outrage? Like the reaction to the Kennedy assassination, or MIAs, or radiation experiments on terminal patients. Watergate, Iran-Contra, Roswell, the Tuskegee experiments. Where will it end?
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth! Get out!
Off what? You'll kill me?
Always remember, dissension's the greatest form of patriotism.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies.
We have before us the opportunity to forge a new world order.
Yes, we can. And you say.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
A lie is most convincingly hidden between two truths. Well, I guess it won't end.
No! I don't have time for this. This is about saving the future of humanity.
We know things are bad, worse than bad. We know the air is unfit to breathe and our food is unfit to eat. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad.
The line must be drawn here. This far, no farther.
I want you to get up right now. Go to your windows, open them, and stick your head out and yell, I'm a human being. My life has value, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You shall not pass!
You're listening to the Revolutionary Radio Project with your host, Rob Skiba.
Hello and welcome to the Revolutionary Radio Project. I am your host, Rob Skiba, and I'm quite excited about tonight's broadcast, actually. First of all, because it's my first time on the Truth Frequency Radio Network. Now, I've been on this network before as a guest with my friend Joe Joseph from the Freedom Link show, but this is my first time as a host, so please bear with me and cut me some slack if we have a few glitches here and there as I get my feet wet here, getting used to the new format. But secondly, I'm excited about my guest for this premiere episode. Tonight, we'll be talking with Freeman Fly. Some of you here on this network may already be familiar with his work, but this is the first time I've had a chance to talk with him. Now, my wife, Sheila, has seen most of Freeman's videos, I think, on YouTube. I have not, but of the ones I have seen, I've always found them to be quite intriguing. So I friended him on Facebook several years ago. Then I want to say it was about, maybe 6 months or so ago, I saw that he had actually posted one of my videos on his wall. And I'm like, he had posted the Mythology and the Coming Great Deception video I have up on YouTube and left a very complimentary comment when he posted it. And I thought, wow, that's like way cool. So I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to contact him. Now, I'm really looking forward to talking with my guest tonight. Freeman is the host of FreemanTV.com. He has been on the forefront of conspiracy theory for nearly 2 decades. In fact, he created the first documentary on HAARP and televised the first documentary on chemtrails. Freeman is internationally known as an award-winning TV producer, filmmaker, radio talk show host, and lecturer. He is considered by many to be an expert in the fields of the occult, trauma-based mind control, Illuminati symbolism, and ancient civilizations. Freeman graduated with an Associate of Arts with honors in interdisciplinary studies and attended Kansas University, specializing in ancient and environmental architecture. Freeman has lectured extensively on the secret signs and symbolism of Freemasonry, the ancient astronaut hypothesis, trauma-based mind control, as I mentioned earlier, social engineering, government conspiracy, human cloning, technologies of the future, and synchronicity. Freeman publicly announced his fears that a false flag event would occur on 9/11, that W would be forced into office, and the economy would collapse on 10/13, and that the next president of America would have his natural-born status questioned. So there you have it. Now you know why I played my conspiracy intro there. For those of my listeners who are following me over from Blog Talk, I welcome you. And for everyone else here on the Truth Frequency Network, this is the Revolutionary Radio Project. I am Rob Skiba, and I'm happy to bring on Freeman Fly. Are you there, sir?
Absolutely, Rob.
There he is.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. Cool. Making sure I got all my buttons ready here. So, Freeman, man, this is really cool. It's an honor to talk with you, sir.
Definitely. I think it's an amazing thing, you and I, because as I watch your videos, I see all of me coming out, and for you to go ahead and admit right up front that we didn't know each other's work at all when we were putting these things together should show people, a bigger picture.
You know, I think that's really cool. I've done a number of conferences. I know you have as well. And it's always neat when you get a bunch of people together who do similar research. We've never talked to each other. We've never seen each other's work before. And yet we'll do a conference side by side. And it's almost like everything just dovetails together.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited. I'm not quite sure where to begin. You sent me a video earlier this week called Aliens from Hell. But before we get into that, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Tell us a little bit more about your background and how did you get into all of this sort of weird and crazy research?
Well, been a truth seeker for a long time. I studied the works of von Daniken and UFOs and such as a child, 10 into teens, was, a weird enough child. And moved on to college, started to learn. I actually was basically put through the Club of Rome's indoctrination program with that interdisciplinary studies. It's straight out. We were reading Limits to Growth and Nietzsche. It was just like Club of Rome, 2.5 years course there. So I was in there with this other semi-genius who was a big fan of Aleister Crowley. And would practice magic, and he had all this ancient occult knowledge, books and such, and so he started showing me things, and I immediately recognized the signs and symbols that he was showing me because my dad used to wear them, and so I quickly learned from him about Freemasonry and about the ideas of the occult and magic, and then realized that my father was tied up in all of this. Not as a high-level, elite family or anything, but into the fact that he had joined the Freemasons in order to rise in the military, because this is one of those necessary things. If you're going to rise, you got to practice these rituals. And then my dad comes out and tells me, well, yeah, I used to chase flying saucers in Project Blue Book, and he was on Killer Submarine with Jimmy Carter. And when I was born, he was building nukes. So this semi-genius, maybe he's a genius, Ed. I call him Alistair Morrison because anyway, he really opened my eyes to this whole other spectrum of reality. And then not only that, it was right there in my own home front. So this just drove me to learn more, to understand more, and the rest is the result of that.
Wow! So you travel around. You've got a tour, or did you already finish your tour? You were living in a bus or something there for a while, there, weren't you?
We were on what we call the friendship agenda. So there is so much negativity out there in the world right now, and so many people being down on people that really it's harder to prove to people that humanity is good than to prove that there's this overarching global conspiracy to control the minds of all humanity. So we decided to prove it, and basically what had happened is wasn't really making enough money doing the radio show. I'm still refusing to get a job. I haven't had a job since 1999, and I just refuse to go back. Although I work all the time, obviously. I've built FreemanTV.com from the ground floor and all the videos for the last 8 years. So it's not like I'm not working, but I just could not go back to the job world. So I stumbled into doing this television show, and unbeknownst to me, my television show on Austin Access, where Alex Jones was also broadcasting, was being uploaded to Google Video. Now, I didn't even know such a thing existed. This was way back in the day, in the beginnings of Google, before YouTube, and I found out that I was somewhat of this internet phenomenon already, without even knowing that this was going on. I was getting to the point of your question, though. Oh, the bus trip. So eventually everything led to this moment where 2012 had come upon us. Now, I had been on the air since 2005, and I decided to say, well, let me show to you, everyone, that there is a divine current, a divine life out there for each and every one of us if we are out to fulfill our own purpose. And that angels will step in your way and guide you and carry you forth as long as you have a good heart and a true heart. And I wanted to prove this to people over and over again, but it's very hard to convince people of synchronicity. It's one of those things that unless you experience God actually interacting in your life, causing events to unfold in such a miraculous way that you can't define it or explain it, that you can't share this really just by talking about it. I could tell you a bunch of stories, but it wouldn't really share with you what you needed. So we decided to hit the road, and 200 of my listeners chipped in $22.50 and bought us a school bus so that we could take this thing across the United States. And by happenstance, without any attempt at doing this, we actually did a sacred spiral around the United States, following the path of the 60s merry pranksters in reverse. And we had no idea that we were doing this. We just were guided by people writing me saying, hey, you can come to my house, and we'd drive our big yellow school bus to their house. And then, of course, what we did with our modern technology is we attempted and broadcast everything that occurred as we went along the way so that you could see live in action the miracles that were befalling us. And we ended up at every Occupy movement across the entire United States. We ended up seeing and meeting with such amazing people as ghost hunters and Tesla scientists, and we found the Ark of the Covenant twice. We ended up going to every Masonic temple there was, and we're filming and broadcasting all of this along the way, the Rosicrucian shrine to Akhenaten, just all kinds of stuff. And so, honestly, just the point of this was the impossibility of taking a 20-ton vehicle across the United States without a job. And we did it, we proved it, we shared it with the world, and now we need to make a movie about it.
Cool. So how much you were documenting it all along the way? Did you air it like some kind of reality TV show or what?
You know, the trouble with this is I don't technically have a cameraman. And so many of the events that were some of the hardships of the trip did not get filmed. Because who's going to stand around and film you while you're... Well, the first night out on the bus, we hit Pennsylvania and the bus just shut off. And we were stuck on the side of the highway with it just rocking in the wake of the semis as they're rolling past us. And we had to hobble that thing all the way to our destination on the other side of Pennsylvania, where then it got completely repaired, remanufactured, new tires, and some millionaires just set the bus up for us. It was amazing.
Wow.
So some of the things, the hardships and stuff, we're going to have to recreate to tell you. But what I did is I created a YouTube channel for the bus, which many people didn't realize. And this taught me a lot about internet streaming, because I have 40,000 plus followers on my YouTube channel, but I made a different channel, not realizing that they weren't going to know about this other channel. And so they all got uploaded, but very few got looked at.
So you need to put up another video on your 40,000 channel and say, hey, go over here.
I tried. We're just going to make a movie out of it. We're going to make a documentary out of it. What really happened on 2012? Because seriously, we were the event of 2012. We pulled off the miraculous, the impossible. And from what we saw traveling around the entire United States for an entire year, is that we were the most interesting thing going on.
I'm going to come back to that, what really happened on 2012. But you said something a minute ago, something about finding the Ark of the Covenant twice. What's that all about?
Well, we like to hit every Mason temple and film and take pictures as much as we can. So on FreemanTV.com, I can give you all that secret inside view. And so the first Ark of the Covenant was at the George Washington Masonic Memorial.
Yeah.
Now, this is an interesting connection, because a lot of people talk about Freemasonry, but they don't understand its Kabbalistic roots, and therefore its Jewish mysticism all wrapped up in there. So inside of this George Washington Masonic Memorial, it's in Washington, D.C., or near there, Alexandria, I believe, to be exact, and it is covered in what is known as the Star of David. It has the Tower of Babel in there, has the Throne of Solomon, and then, of course, all of the different angelic burning bush, and them carrying the Ark of the Covenant into this situation. And then they have a mock-up of the Ark of the Covenant with a menorah and all of that right there inside of that one.
Yeah, I went to Washington, D.C. a couple of years ago, having taken the red pill, so to speak. I grew up in Massachusetts, so we made lots of trips down to D.C. I had friends down there, and we'd do school field trips and stuff like that. So I've been there many times, but never saw. I mean, you're looking at stuff, but you're not seeing anything, when you're sucking on the blue pill. But after I did a whole lot of research for my first book, Babylon Rising, The First Shall Be Last, I took the proverbial red pill, and then I thought, I'm going to go back there now that my eyes have been opened and see what I see. And wow, I mean, the stuff is everywhere. We went to the George Washington Masonic Temple also. It stands at 333 feet high, as I recall.
It's very tall.
Yeah, the numbers are interesting, though.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
They got to put their signature on everything,
No doubt about it.
So,
and that kind of clued me into the idea that this all had purpose and meaning. You don't just make the street plans of D.C. into pentagrams for no reason. These guys don't spend money for no reason, and that really is what kind of solidified the concept that these guys are using an occulted science, a science of magic. Can I share one quick story with you from Washington, D.C. that I think you'll enjoy?
Yeah, sure.
My first time in Washington, D.C., I started out as a juggling fool, and I just juggled across the United States, and that's how I first started traveling back in 1993. And I ended up in Washington, D.C. as one of my first places for some odd reason. And at that moment, the Rainbow Gathering, which is a tribe of hippies, or it's not even hippies, it's just anarchists, really, of all beliefs and creeds that come together and gather together to try to keep some lands of America sacred to the Americans and to the humans. And as the federal laws are starting to take away all the national forests, they were trying to fight these federal lands. So anyway, the Rainbow had gathered in front of Bill Clinton's White House. And I ended up falling into this. And there's hundreds of people sleeping in the park in front of Washington, D.C. And so we decided to do some meditation, do some prayer, do some just feeling love in this situation. And it turned out that in some weird event, the sewage erupted up out of the sewage drains and surrounded the White House in fecal matter for 3 days after our love was put into this situation. And it turned out that that was the exact same time that they were doing the experiments in D.C. where they were attempting meditation and prayer on the positive and had lowered the crime rate in Washington, D.C. We were there at the exact same time, not realizing that both things were happening. But yeah, you had told some stories about events, and I wanted to share that one with you. That, I mean, something drove that sewage all over the White House.
That's awesome, man. I certainly believe in the power of prayer. And, after I came back from that trip, I was real frustrated because from a biblical worldview, that place is just full of pagan idolatry everywhere. And, you see God commanding the Israelites to, tear all that stuff down, wipe that stuff out, get rid of it. And, of course, I can't go and do that, but I was really frustrated by it. And I'm a doer. I'm a kind of get on the ground and go do stuff kind of person. And I was like, this stuff's everywhere. And I was really frustrated by it. And I'm like, this stuff needs to come down. And this older woman was sitting next to me. We were with a group of friends, and she says, no, we need to pray. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So anyway, we did, as a group of probably about 12 people, we just prayed against the false gods and idolatry that are represented in our nation's capital. And I kid you not, that was the evening or the day that the Washington Monument, they had that big earthquake, and the Washington Monument kind of went, kind of tilted a little bit. And
it almost fell.
Yeah, it cracked in a few places. And
good for you.
I kid you not. All my friends were on Facebook like, Rob, check it out. Ah! Like everybody that was there for that prayer meeting. So maybe we just need to do a concentrated prayer against all the false gods that are represented in our country on a more regular and intentional basis, because it is everywhere for sure.
I think it's a good way for people to get involved, because right now we feel like little fish in a big pond, and we don't feel like we have much power, and we really do. That was something else that I was trying to get through with our 2012 trip.
Yeah. Well, biblically speaking, it says, greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. So if we understand as believers what we have inside of us, then there's enormous power inside of us. And, quite frankly, there's 300 million of us in this country. And there's 528 or something like that in Washington, D.C. ruling over us?
Right.
So, yeah. Now, you're probably familiar with, I don't know if you are or not. I guess I'll ask you. Are you familiar with the works of Chris Pinto?
No.
You might want to check out some of his videos. He has a number of them on Freemasonry and our founding fathers and whatnot. One in particular is called The Hidden Faith of Our Founding Fathers. And he shows that, no, this is not a Christian-founded country. These guys were Illuminists, Rosicrucians, deists, Freemasons. When you talk about Pilgrims and Puritans, sure, okay, you could find Christian heritage there. But the guys who designed Washington, D.C. and set up our government, no, absolutely not.
Not one bit.
Yeah, so if you haven't had a chance to check it out, maybe I'll send you a link, or you just look it up on YouTube. It's The Hidden Faith of Our Founding Fathers.
All right.
Pretty wild stuff. But, I've been taught, as many of us have been, that this is a Christian-founded country. And you got people like David Barton, who has an organization called Wall Builders, that travels around, goes to churches, and tries to convince everybody that our founding fathers were Christians. In your research, have you found any of that to be even remotely true?
Not in the strictest sense. They would call themselves that, but behind the closed doors, they were practicing these death and resurrection rituals, which surpassed their own creed. As we went to every single Mason temple, you would see that there were 3 books of truth on there. They'd have the Torah, the Talmud, and the Bible. So it was any faith was accepted into this free Masonic order. The only thing that was really required of you is, one, that you came of your own free will and accord. And this was something that I found is a critical factor to our moral shield, to our spiritual shield, that you must come in there. And they are always forcing us to give up our free will and accord for the situations that we're going through. So this, to me, is a spiritual wall that they can't transcend, and so they have to have us do that on our own. So as every Mason walks into the lodge in those pajamas with his blindfold on and the noose around his neck, having all metal parts removed from his person, is then required upon the point of a sword to admit that he has come of his own free will and accord. This, to me, was a critical factor. The ideas of what they participate inside of this death and resurrection ritual, and clearly when Albert Pike speaks of Freemasonry, and he wrote the outline for the Scottish Rite, the book Morals and Dogma, he states over 70 times that Freemasonry is Kabbalah.
Oh.
So it is absolutely a Kabbalistic belief system.
All right, hold that thought. We're going to a break, and we'll be back in 3 minutes with Freeman Fly.
Degrees of Insanity with Donnie Gilson. Sunday on Truth Frequency Radio.
And we're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I am your host, Rob Skiba, and tonight we're talking with Freeman Fly. Freeman, do you remember where you left off?
We were discussing Kabbalah's connection, or Freemasonry's connection to Kabbalah.
Yeah, I want to carry that into some of the architecture in Washington, D.C. It seems like that's one of those areas that you're knowledgeable in. And when we were there walking around, of course, we only had 5 hours, and you really need like a week to go through the mall there and everything. But we we tried to be intentional about where we were going. So one of the places, of course, being the Capitol building. And I'm one of these type of people that I wake up in the morning, especially when I'm doing a lot of research, and I'll have a word or a subject or a phrase or a name like just stuck in my head as soon as I wake up. Like this one particular morning, I woke up with Ningirsu stuck in my head. I'm like, Ningirsu? What is Ningirsu? So I'm like, okay, I guess that's my assignment for today. So I went and looked into Ningirsu, found it was an earlier representation of Ninurta, who had already connected to Nimrod of the Bible. And when you look into Nimrod, you can't help but find Semiramis. And when you find Semiramis, you find that she's known by as many different names as Nimrod is. Of course, you got Ishtar, Isis, Columbia, which is on the roof of the Capitol building. Well, as I'm looking into all of this stuff, I saw that Ningirsu and Ninurta were like Baal, the Canaanite god Baal, were God. It was a god that had the attributes of agriculture and war. And okay, I already made a lot of the synchronicity connections there. But when these gods morph into different cultures, from the Sumerians to the Babylonians, to the Egyptians, to the Greeks, to the Romans, everybody's borrowing from each other. And I started to see how different gods, their personalities would get split into other gods. Like you had the god of agriculture and war, but they decided to split that god in the Romans to the god of war attribute going to Mars and the god of agriculture attribute going to Ceres. Well, what do you know? When you walk up the stairs to the Capitol building, you have Mars on your right and Ceres on your left. So you're literally walking right through Nimrod to go into the womb of Isis, Semiramis. And we went into the visitor center, and we see this huge statue of Columbia right there. And there's a little movie theater off to the right. and we go into the movie theater, and it starts off with all this patriotic music and imagery and stuff, this movie showing the origin of the Capitol building, and these big words come across the screen, the Temple of Liberty. And I'm like, temple? Temples are for gods. Well, which god? Well, we just passed her in a hallway. What can you tell us about the architecture of Washington, D.C., how it plays into the occult, Freemasonry, symbolism, and the gods of the ancient world?
Okay, well, just on that note, and we can branch out to New World Order global capitals, but the idea of Semiramis and Ishtar and this goddess worship also goes back to the star Sirius, which is the main star of Egypt and the main star of Freemasonry, what Freemasonry calls the blazing star, which is typically represented as a burning pentagram. Now, in ancient Egypt, the hieroglyph for Sirius is an obelisk, a dome, and a pentagram. And so in Austin, Texas, you have the clock tower that is the obelisk that has Columbia standing right in front of it, being drawn forth by mermen. Now, the fish people, the merfolk, have always been part of my study, and you'll find that Nimrod and Semiramis also are considered these type of mer beings, mermaids or fish people.
Right.
And so here was in Austin, they literally have the obelisk with Columbia standing. Well, George Washington's first, and then Columbia there being drawn forth on a boat as an angel by fishermen riding fish horses, and then directly in front of that is the Capitol dome with the goddess standing on top of it, who looks exactly like the ancient Sumerian depictions. If you look at the goddess that stands on top of the Austin capital of Texas, you will clearly see those facial structures. If you look at the Sumerian ancient structures of the faces, they look kind of weird and blocky and just strange, and big eyes and such. Well, this goddess on top of the Austin is also holding a pentagram. So she looks just like Ea or Enki. When I superimposed the two faces together, those were the two that I could find the closest, and that she is then holding the pentagram. So you have the obelisk, the dome, and the pentagram, this sign and symbol to Sirius. And it's the same in Washington, D.C., with the obelisk, the dome, and then you've got the pentagram and the layout of the street plans. So this all goes to that star, the dog star. And a strange little ritual connection that I just feel like throwing in there for Sirius, and one of the 9/11 ritual connections. There was a dog who was kept in a cage there. I think it was a police dog in the Twin Towers as they came down, and its name was also Sirius, and just kind of a weird connection. I often use these triggers and signs and symbols to clue me into when the Brotherhood is supposed to be paying attention to something, and when the attack of the Sirius star occurred and every nation then came down into the land of Cain to Yemen, and we're all off the coast there, and then there was some strange magnetic anomaly that occurred as well in that very same Gulf.
I didn't get real deep into that. I just scratched the surface on it. How much do you know about that? I mean, that was crazy. Like, it's like all the different world powers had some kind of representation there, battleships or what have you. It seemed like everybody was there.
Yeah, honestly, at that moment, I was covering the concept. There was a Ethiopian minister, Ethiopian priest, who had announced that he was going to reveal the true Ark of the Covenant to mankind. Now, it was believed and shown through Graham Hancock's work, I think it was The Sign and the Seal, that showed that the Ark of the Covenant most likely was in Ethiopia and held by the Falashas, who are the black Jews of Ethiopia, and that they do have a ritual every year where they bring out many, many replicas of the Ark of the Covenant, and one of them is supposedly real. Well, this priest was going to reveal this to the world, but he said, I had to talk with the Pope first. Now, this was when we had Ratzinger and Nazi youth from Bavaria in charge. And we never heard from that priest again about the Ark of the Covenant. But to me, the Ark of the Covenant was one of the clear signs of the Well, I know from a religious standpoint, it would be the voice of God, but from someone who was just seen, that's why I find our research so interesting, Rob, is because you and I are on this same plane. We're talking about the same stuff. We're showing it over and over again. But I personally don't have a religious background. So I'm kind of coming at it like a scientist who believes in magic, right? And we're both pointing out an Armageddon script. And I'm simply coming at it from one viewpoint saying, well, look, they're enacting this. I mean, it is the book of Revelations opening before us. Whether or not it's a plan or if it's God's plan, I don't know. So here I am, the outside observer, coming at you with the exact same stuff going, oh, my God, look at this situation.
Yeah, and I think there's value in that. I was recently asked to speak at a secular UFO conference. Most of my lectures and conferences that I've been to have been Christian eschatological, end times type conferences and stuff like that. But I was asked to speak at the 54th annual UFO conference in New Jersey, and this was all the Ancient Aliens crowd. This is Robert Schoch, Nick Redford, and a bunch of other people. But what was cool is, we all had mutual respect for each other's research, and we found that, like I said earlier, it all really dovetailed nicely into what the other person was saying, and we had some really cool, lengthy conversations outside of the conference. We were staying at somebody's house. So I think there's value in coming together, and that's what I'm trying to do with my radio show, is make a venue where that's possible. Because unfortunately, in Christian circles, people get real hyper dogmatic about certain views, and if you don't believe the same way they do, well, you're a heretic, and you're, it's time to send you out to the rack or whatever.
Right.
And look, I'm not like that. I want to talk. I want to see what other people are seeing, because I believe that none of us have it 100% right, and I believe that none of us have 100% wrong. So let's talk about it. Let's compare notes.
I saw the Ark of the Covenant as the first weapon of mass destruction. And that Moses had been giving the technology, the understanding to be able to transmit this power. And the story of Moses going up to the mountain and meeting with the burning bush and being given such specific instructions on how to build this ark of acacia wood and gold, and then was given these, what some have reported to be crystalline structures, and what traditionally has become known as the Ten Commandments. But the story of Moses coming down that mountain and finding that these stones didn't work. There was no reaction once he came down amongst his people. Now it says at this point he found the people worshiping the golden calf, and he burnt the calf and it turned to dust. Now this kind of led to the idea of monatomic gold and transdimensional properties. But so he returns to the mountain, and this time it's required of him to do the stones on his own. This time, when he returns down with the stones, they glow, they radiate, and his face from that moment on radiates, and he has to wear a veil. Now, from an outside secular point of view, I'm seeing kind of a connection here with radiation, because then these stones are put into this electromagnetic conductor, the Ark of the Covenant, which is perfectly given these very specific directions to build, and it is utilized as the first weapon of mass destruction. And so the Hebrews would wrap this all up in their cloaks and furs, but it was said that those that would touch it would often die of electrical shocks, or even when the Ark was stolen, it was then opened by kings around as they passed it along, and they would die from this withering disease, which would be considered radiation poisoning at this time. And then we have the strange story of Hiram Abiff, which is the base story for the rituals of Freemasonry. So that's why I give you this story, because then Hiram in the Bible is Hiram the copper worker and didn't really have any connection to this story in the Bible, but in Freemasonic lore, he is the main person, the main character, the person you pretend to be as you go through this ritual of death and resurrection of Hiram Abiff. And he was the one, so King Hiram of Tyre was sent down to gather, or King Solomon sent to King Hiram of Tyre to bring this builder. This is Masonic lore. To bring this builder, King Hiram, and there's so many Hirams. You got King Hiram of Tyre and then Hiram the builder, okay? So don't get confused. Hiram Abiff, the builder of Freemasonry, builds the house that is able to house this weapon of mass destruction, and then it is contained within gold electroplated walls. And so when someone looks at a story like this, you clearly see that there was technological advancements in the ancient past that we don't understand. And of course, in your studies, you've come across the movement of the stones at Baalbek, or the very stones of the Great Pyramid and such. And I did like your Arnold Schwarzenegger picture, I must say. And that would be the clearest idea that I could come up with, because other than anti-gravity, giants would be, the story there.
Yeah, I just did a conference in Crosbyton, Texas this past weekend at the Mount Blanco Fossil Museum. It was myself, Dr. Judd Burton, and Joe Taylor, who are archaeologists and anthropologists, and they're looking at this stuff, from a scientific point of view, and I'm looking at this stuff from a historical and biblical point of view, as are they. And we're looking at the evidence for giants. And literally, everybody... pick a culture around the world. They've got a story of giants. They're all over the Americas. They're all over the ancient world. And you talk about Hiram, and I always wondered, and maybe you can talk to this, but, I looked into Freemasonry, not nearly as much as you have, of course, but looking into it, I'm going, why is it that these occultists are like obsessed with the Temple of Solomon and Jacob and Boaz, and they just like Solomon's their guy, Now, I get it that he went off the deep end. In the Bible, it says he, all those wives and concubines, and, he started going after the other gods and whatnot. But at the time when he built the temple, or had the temple built, he was still walking in the ways of his father David in obedience to Yahweh. So I'm looking into this, and as I keep digging, and like 1 Kings, I think it's chapter 3 through 9 or 10. And 11 and stuff, you start seeing who built the temple. Of course, Hiram comes in from having just built the temple of Zeus, or Jupiter, in Lebanon, comes down there and is conscripted or hired by Solomon to build this structure. And 666 talents of gold are brought in every year to finance the thing. And when I looked into who did it, it's all the ites that the Israelites were told to utterly destroy repeatedly throughout the Old Testament, which in my research has borne out that these guys were Nephilim, angel-human hybrids, from Genesis 6. So I'm going, wait a minute. You got a guy who built the temple of Jupiter, or Zeus, building the temple of Yahweh with 666 talents of gold, using Nephilim to build the thing? I'm like, what in the world makes this thing holy? And the only conclusion I could come to was at the time when Solomon dedicated it, his heart was still right. His prayer of dedication is beautiful. And God basically says, you know what? I really appreciate what you've done. I'm paraphrasing, of course. And as long as you continue to walk in the ways of your father David and in my ways, then I will put my name on this thing that you've constructed. And that's the only thing that made it holy. And of course, later Solomon goes off the deep end. So, and then the second temple doesn't even have the Ark of the Covenant in it. So, what's your take? That's sort of a nutshell of what the conclusions that I came to regarding the temple and its connection to Freemasonries. But what's their obsession with Solomon and the temple?
Well, this will dovetail very well with the idea of the New World Order global capitals, because Solomon is their lead magician. Solomon was one who made contact with daemons and had outlined a method of sigils in order to contact and control these demons. And this is what they called them, right? This is their own words. So these signs and seals have then now been utilized within street plans and in city parks. So out in front of Nashville, which according to some is one of the most satanic cities in America. Of course, there's the massive black pyramid there, or silver, I guess it is. And on the new Nile, right? But in front of the capital of Nashville, there is a bicentennial mall, which has a symbol to the Titans, which of course is their sports team there in Tennessee.
Of course.
And the Titan symbol, of course, is 3 pentagrams facing each other. So at the head of this seal, so if you were to look at the Nashville Capitol Mall from the sky, you would see Solomon's seal that he utilized to bind the 72 demons. Mm-hmm. And this is the main seal of them all. The others would be to conjure. This one was to control. And they utilized that exact seal to design the outline and the pattern of this bicentennial mall, to the point that there's a black granite wall, a black wall that goes around the entire thing, giving the history of life on planet Earth, starting from Atlantis and moving up to the time that the park was built. There's a massive black earth floating on water there that was built by the Germans and is overshadowed by these giant monoliths with nothing but signs of destruction, including nuclear explosions on top of them, which says victory over the top of it, which I guess some people consider it that. But this entire layout is then set up on a frequency modulation so that when you stand in the center of those 3 pentagrams, the sign of the Titans, and there's an iron rod that goes down into the earth from there, and it's made of all frequencies of quartz crystal, which of course is what generates the energy of our computer or gives you your megahertz. And then there are 25 columns that surround this circle of pentagrams that reflect all of the audio sound right back to the central point. Now, this exact same Seal of Solomon is also utilized in the street plans of Astana, which was the really second ever created pre-planned city. So you have the city of it was done by the Griffins. Why did I lose that? But okay, well, back to Astana. You find that the very word Astana means threshold or passage through. And as you walk into Astana, they have a massive pyramid of peace where all the world's religions gather around a giant sun table. And, of course, this is mostly Muslim inside of this circle. And then as you walk through this glass pyramid of peace, you enter into the city of Astana. And this is in Kazakhstan, where they launched the International Space Station. You have 2 glowing copper columns, which you will also see at all of the Solomon lodges, the 2 columns of Jachin and Boaz. And then inside is this big buckyball on a spire that has the hand of the architect put into a big gold triangle looking like something out of Total Recall. Mm-hmm. Now, the city of Astana is setting the pace for what the modern world is going to be. They're building the first ever indoor city there that's going to be fully climate controlled. This is also where they decided to put Dubai is nearby there, and they have the Atlantis. That was also another pre-planned city with the Tree of Life there and the setup in Atlantis there. You start to realize that they have a purpose for this, and they believe in this magic, this channeling of entities, these otherworldly entities that they can then utilize using these tools of frequency modulation, which are sigils in magic, and building entire street plans and cities out of them.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to mention that the one in Nashville happens to sit right upon a Native American burial ground.
Oh, interesting. As I was doing my studies on this and starting to travel, I found that this motif is it's everywhere. It's all over the world. When I was talking about what Manly P. Hall has to say regarding the so-called American eagle, if it has a point on the back of its head, it's really a phoenix. And the iconography on the back of our dollar bill. I'm in Cape Town, South Africa, and I'm talking about this, about our currency and stuff. in our government buildings and whatnot. Well, the guy that was hosting us in Cape Town, he said, "Let me show you something." And he started showing me their currency, and in Afrikaans, in their language, it was saying all the same stuff with very similar iconography. Then I'm in Manitoba, Canada, and I'm up there, and they take me to their kind of state capital, and you see the same thing where you got the obelisk and the dome and the reflection pool is always there too. You want to talk a little bit about that, the connection between the obelisk and the dome with the reflection pool, because it's everywhere.
It is. And you made me flash to Nicholas Roerich real quick, because you had mentioned the back of the dollar bill. And Nicholas Roerich, this will give people another idea or understanding of what they believe, because he was the man who was behind getting Henry Wallace to put the pyramid on the dollar bill.
Yes.
And at this time, of course, Wallace was a head of agriculture, and Nicholas Roerich was his guru. Now, Roerich was paid by the American government to go around to different sites in Tibet and around the Near East and to perform rituals in subterranean caverns in massive crystalline structures. And he paints all of this. And if you go to freemantv.com, you can look at all of Roerich's paintings. We filmed them all. And his whole books on peace and his horses. You would love the horse riders. And Nicholas Roerich had a building built for him in New York City called the Master Building.
Yeah.
And very much like the story inside of Ghostbusters, this building was built to channel entities into the ceiling of the building where they had put this meditation room. And so there is another concept, again, of architecture, of using geomancy or archomancy to create an antenna for these entities.
That's awesome. You know, you may or may not know this. I'm creating a TV series called Seed.
Oh, I know.
Okay.
I want to be a writer.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely have to talk about that, because episode 3, Seed is structured very similar to the X-Files, where you have a really weird, freaky thing happen first as a teaser, and then the opening title credits, first commercial break, then Act 1. Well, in Seed episode 3, I have a scene where Nicholas Roerich is paying a visit to Henry Wallace right after he won the election, and he gives him the casket. And we're getting ready to go to break here, but I wonder if you know anything about the casket that he was said to carry around. There's a famous painting of him holding it.
As I say, we do have all those on film on freemantv.com that you can just go there and watch it, or go to the photography section and have a look. I do have a video that says Nicholas Roerich, the man behind the pyramid there. But just, real quick, it's supposed to be a piece of Sirius, which doesn't make any sense to me, but that's the closest I've come to understanding it. And then it's also said to be lying in the cornerstone of the Master Building, which I also have a picture of there. They wouldn't let us up into the meditation room, but I believe one film crew did go up there. But I heard it was a piece of Sirius, which of course doesn't make any sense. How could you have a piece of a star in there? But in his paintings, he is absolutely carrying this coffin in every scenario that I mentioned, down in these ancient structures, down inside of the earth, and performing rituals.
All right, we'll come back in 3 minutes and talk more about that with Freeman Fly.
Real people, real radio.
Initiating the truth frequency.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
And we're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I am your host, Rob Skiba, and tonight we are talking with Freeman Fly. Before the break, we were talking about Nicholas Roerich and the casket that he liked to carry around. Now, you were saying that you think that there's a piece of Sirius inside of it, and I'm wondering, because you had made the connection with Sirius, the Dog Star, and Semiramis and Nimrod. Nimrod and the Egyptian being known as Osiris. I believe that there's a piece of Osiris in there, possibly his missing piece. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that would actually make a lot of sense. Now, I like you were witnessing when Zahi Hawass came forward and announced that he had found the Tomb of Osiris.
Yeah.
And they eventually changed the name to the Osiris Shaft, which of course was somewhat of a pun, I think. But there he was, with I think it was Maury Povich. I don't remember who the poor host that he frightened to death with him on the whole scenario. But there they showed deep down inside of the earth, deeper than any average human being would ever consider digging, with like copper tools. They found the Tomb of Osiris, completely submerged in water with 4 obelisks surrounding it and a massive sarcophagus in the middle. And, of course, no body. So that would be a prize to any of these occultists, absolutely.
Yeah, in my research, I had dug into that, so to speak, pardon the pun. I put together a video on YouTube called The Omega Plan. It's like a 22-minute video showing presidents and news reports and people saying stuff that I believe is illustrating what I believe is probably the end game plan to raise Osiris. And so when you look at that thing, the Tomb of Osiris that they found, I mean, it looks like a resurrection chamber, something you'd see in Stargate or something.
Absolutely.
That's what I want to transition into is talking about that video that you sent me, Aliens or from Hell. And then, of course, you've got the reports of Gilgamesh, who is also linked to Osiris Nimrod. The body of Gilgamesh being pulled out of the desert sands of Iraq in April of 2003, coincidentally 1 month before we set up the military occupation phase. And the first thing our troops do is raid the Museum of Baghdad. 170,000 items stolen, most of them returned, but of the 3,000 not returned, they're cuneiform tablets dealing with resurrection in the afterlife. It's like, okay, were they trying to tell us something with shows like Stargate?
Yeah, to me, it was such a kick in the butt because here I had been trying to prove to people that there was and is a United States Space Force. I mean, as we sit here right now, the military X-37B super secret robotic space plane has been orbiting our planet for over a year. And this is, I believe, the 4th mission of the X-37B. The mysterious meteor that came in over Russia that seemed to have no bolide but caused a sonic boom and an earthquake. These are something that I had been tracking all along as well. Came about right after the X-37B was up there doing God knows what the X-37B does. So now you're talking about a robotic space plane and a telepresence robot on the International Space Station, Robonaut 2. And these both are capable of mind transfer technologies where you can connect yourself to this robot and basically utilize it as your own body. Now, sorry, I was hearing something in the background, and it threw me for a loop there for a second. So when I'm trying to tell people, yes, there is a United States Space Force, you got to understand this, and you're going to watch Obama take down NASA. You're going to watch him cancel out the space shuttle systems and start the Ares rocket program, which, of course, again, is the god Mars, the god of war, and we're going to be moving to a military space program in the very near future. And sure enough, Obama shut that down. Now, when you watch the episodes of Stargate or even the movie Stargate, you will clearly see the United States Space Force Space Command seals on their jackets. I mean, it was open right there. And the truth was that after you watched every episode, at the end of the episode, it would say this was made possible by the United States Space Force and Space Command. And so they were actually involved in the creation of Stargate, in bringing out this idea of wormholes. And instead of using spacecraft, you're now transmitting yourself through space and time utilizing these wormholes. Yeah, it's right there. It was right in front of everybody's faces, but I think that's how they do it. They make it such a corny scenario. The episode in SG-1 where they actually made fun of themselves, having the Space Force show up and talk to them about the script for the new series they were going to make. I think it was called Wormhole X, but it was like this whole parody of how they ended up creating SG-1 in the first place. The TV show, it's astounding, and a lot of that is coming through in these television shows. The CIA has now gotten involved in writing television. They didn't do that before, and they came out with Alias. That was the first CIA scripted television show. But yeah, it's right there in front of us, and that whole idea. Okay, now this blew me away, Rob, and this was something that the Stargate fans had discovered, and they didn't realize what they were really seeing. At the time, I had just put together this connection of Obama with Akhenaten, the ancient pharaoh, who we can get to, but I was utilizing this idea of him as Akhenaten because their faces were identical, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. But the next thing to occur, the next thing necessary to push this plan forward, according to Werner von Braun, the Nazi, was an asteroid attack. And so I made an artwork back in 2009 of Akhenaten, Obama's split face with Akhenaten, and a meteor hurtling down towards his head and all the people running in fear. And I did this to kind of preempt the psychoengineering, the social engineering that was going to come out of this asteroid threat. And lo and behold, if it wasn't just 1 week, maybe less later, that they announced, oh my God, there's a massive asteroid hurtling towards planet Earth, and it should destroy all life in 2029 or possibly 2036. But we won't know for certain until 2013. Now, this was, again, back in 2009. And lo and behold, if that asteroid wasn't known as Apophis, the serpent deity of destruction of Akhenaten, basically his Satan. And I had foretold this event, and I was shocked. I mean, I was blown away that this asteroid was named after Apophis. And it came from a group of asteroids known as the Aten, which of course was the sun god of Akhenaten. But what really shocked me, and what I was getting to, was the Stargate fans had. I was doing more research on Apophis, and I saw it connected to Stargate, and I hadn't really watched the TV series at this point, so I went to the Stargate fan page, and there was a picture of Obama looking identical to the character of SG-1, Apophis, who was one of the Nemesis characters in there, and one of the evil Goa'uld, and he looked just like Obama. They had put this picture together of Obama and Apophis, and I mean, they're in the same position, same hand. And then they went on to say, well, who other lookalikes are in there? And they managed to find the entire Obama administration. So Hillary Clinton was there. What is her name? Well, they're all there. You can see it in my Obama article that the entire Obama administration were actually characterized as the lead characters of SG-1. You could set them side by side and look at it. It's mind-boggling. You're like, oh my God, because SG-1 came out in the late mid-90s.
90s, yeah. Yeah. Now, speaking of Obama being likened unto the Satan character on SG-1, I'm going to play a clip right now, and I want you to comment on this, regarding Obama's little chant that he had when he was campaigning.
We're
gonna spread happiness. We're gonna spread freedom. Obama's gonna change it. Obama's gonna lead them. We're gonna change it.
Yes, we can.
And rearrange it. We're gonna change the world. Now's the moment where these voices sing. Sing with all your heart.
And you say,
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. And you say, Holy Quran teaches that whoever kills an innocent it is as if he has killed all mankind.
We're gonna spread happiness. We're gonna spread freedom. Obama's gonna change it.
I was actually born on Krypton.
We're gonna change it and rearrange it.
I'm a Christian. My Muslim faith.
We're gonna change the world.
You say. 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 You say.
Okay, like that is seriously freaky. And that's a clip from the video you sent to me earlier, Aliens from Hell. I had stumbled across that early on as well, and I was, when I first saw it, I was skeptical. And so I thought, okay, I mean, how in the world does Yes We Can end up sounding like Thank You, Satan? And I couldn't, imagine how, I'm spelling it backwards on paper going, how does that work? So I got, my wife had an app on her iPhone that allows you to record your voice and then play it backwards. And so I said it the same, you really have to say it kind of the same way that he says. Mm-hmm. He uses a certain incantation voice, the way he says it. And if you say it the way he says it, and I did, I recorded myself, and then I played it backwards, and I heard myself saying, "Thank you, Satan." And I'm like, whoa. And when you put that together with the fact that he's standing in front of the altar of Satan, which is the temple of or the altar of Zeus, the seat of Satan in Pergamum, for the Denver, his acceptance speech in Denver, Colorado, and he's got huge masses of people saying this back. So basically everybody's saying, "Thank you, Satan." I mean, from your worldview, what's going on in your head when you're seeing that?
Yeah, it's mind-boggling, isn't it?
Oh man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm tripped up on all of this as much and clearly getting convinced that there is a satanic agenda with all of the signs and symbols that I have now outlined. I mean, almost everything you're looking at these days is satanic. But when that came out, I started digging a little deeper, and I had already been, and so I had kind of 3 running scenarios for Barack Obama, and that was the failed president, the Antichrist, and then the clone of Akhenaten. All of them really fitting into the same spectrum. But when we start to look at Barack Obama, we see, first of all, that that's not his name. Is he Barry Soetoro? Is he Barry Dunham? Now, when W was forced into office, which I predicted, utilizing the concepts of Kabbalah and understanding that the letter W, or 2 V's together, actually represent the abyss, or the place where the beast rises. And I predicted correctly that that W would be forced into office because he had that letter W. And this kind of turned me on to the ritual aspects. I had already started looking at the ideas that Saddam Hussein was claiming to be Nebuchadnezzar reincarnated, that they were using the shock and awe campaign, which related to the Holy Spirit or the Shekinah of Hebrew mysticism. And they were using the mother of all bombs to blow them up in Baghdad, which, of course, was the Moabs. And this was the very people that Nebuchadnezzar was fighting against. But when you start to get to Barack Obama, you go pull out, you can do it online. I have it in my Obama article, Obama Clone of Akhenaten, where you can see the Hebrew concordance showing that the words Barak means from the heights. Or I'm sorry, Barak means lightning. And then Bama is from the heights. And so this is lightning from heaven, Barack Obama. And this is pretty much the most clearest definition or description of Satan in the Bible. And Satan fell as lightning from heaven. And it would have been said, and Satan fell like Barack Obama, if it were speaking in the language of Jesus, in Aramaic, right? But there was more to it than this to me, because I was still looking at him as a clone of Akhenaten, and I'm not going to let this one go. I've lost listeners over this. I have lost, friends over this, but I'm not going to let it go, because I'm looking at 5 faces now. 5 faces. That is Barack, Michelle, Malaya, Sasha, and Beyonce. And all 5 faces are exact matches to these mummified ancient pharaohs. And the thing was that the other title given to Barack Obama by the Secret Service was renegade. Now, if you look up the definition of renegade, now, first of all, Akhenaten was constantly known as the renegade pharaoh for turning Egypt on its head, for going to monotheism, for moving the capital. He was considered by the Brotherhood, by the elite, by the Freemasons as the first individual, the first humanitarian, the first real person. But he was known as the renegade pharaoh. Now they called Obama, the Secret Service called Obama renegade. And when you look up the definition of renegade, that means someone who rebels or becomes an outlaw, or a disloyal person who betrays and deserts his cause or religion, or political party and friends, right? This is the straight definition. And then as another statement, it's Christian turned Muslim. Now, you also notice in that audio that you played where I have Obama saying, "Now I'm a Christian and my Muslim faith."
Right.
So you've even got that fit. And then, it says, see also disloyal, defector, deserter, dissent, protest, turncoat, resist, apostate, right? These are all the definitions of renegade, what our Secret Service are calling the president. But then Michelle was known as Renaissance, which was the revival, the rising again, the bringing back to life or reincarnation or rebirth. And then the daughters were known as Radiance and Rosebud, which happened to be the only other 2 features in the depiction of Akhenaten with Nefertiti and his 2 daughters are the radiance of the 10 and the rosebuds that they are offering up to the hands coming down. So all of the names also fit. But then the very clue of Barack Obama being lightning from heaven also just played another role. So, see, I'm stuck out here, Rob, without a religion to fall on it. And I'm a scientist saying, look, this is all real. Even to the point of the cloning of Barack Obama, because this is something that I've been talking about since the day I started my show. Back in 2005, I was talking about the cloning of mummies, because I knew back in the early 80s, they had already perfected the idea of cloning mummies. They cloned a mummy from Akhenaten's period. And they brought cells back to life. They didn't resurrect the mummy, but they brought it to life and proved that mummification did save a viable cell for cloning 2,500 years in the future. And as I announced that Obama was a clone of Akhenaten, and then realizing that the rest of the family are an exact match as well, I had no proof at the time, because Akhenaten had been hidden for over 100 years. In 1907, his tomb, the KV-55 mummy was discovered. And for 100 years, it's been debated as to whether or not this was Akhenaten's mummy, until, lo and behold, Zahi Hawass, and I would love to rail on him for a bit, announced to the public through Discovery, who had paid for the clone lab, or the DNA lab, that they built under the Cairo Museum, that he did have, actually had Akhenaten's DNA. And they show you the DNA on the Discovery Channel, and you'll see clearly on it KV55, the KV55 mummy. And I was watching the archaeological worlds at this time because, like I say, this has been a debate for 107 years at this point. And lo and behold, if Zahi didn't just come out and throw up, oh yeah, we've had it all along, but I couldn't tell you this. And he said so in a report that it was a national security secret. Now, when Obama came to power, they then started transporting this giant Anubis, right, the black jackal-headed god of the underworld, all around across the Thames and bound to Texas, and finally to lay rest at the Denver International Airport. And each time following this display of Anubis was all of the artistry and the busts and everything of Akhenaten and Queen T, who I say Michelle Obama is, which would actually make Michelle Obama's mother, not his wife, whereas Beyonce, being the exact depiction of Nefertiti, would be his actual wife. And as soon as I put that information out into the stream, did the cut picture of Beyonce with Nefertiti to show you that they were an exact match, they announced that they had found... the French newspaper said that Barack and Beyonce were having an affair. So it's just like thing after thing after thing. And Zahi, to be the one behind all of this, him being raised by the Association of Research and Enlightenment, the Edgar Cayce group, who are trying to completely prove that Atlantis was a reality, and yet Zahi being the staunch opponent to the ideas of ancient civilizations. And here we have these two forces actually joined together. And Zahi was at the Dallas Museum when they displayed the Akhenaten and Queen T stuff. I was there as well. And guess who else showed up? George W. and Barbara were there as well. So this was enough to draw the president, or ex-president at this time, into the arena of Zahi and Akhenaten. And this story just doesn't lay down. It won't stop. It just keeps going.
I would definitely want to come back after the break and talk more about the whole Akhenaten thing. But you just mentioned George W. and Barbara. Or were you talking about George H.?
Yeah, H. Yeah.
Okay, George H. and Barbara. What is your take? I've heard and I've read some very compelling things myself about the idea that Barbara Bush is actually the daughter of Aleister Crowley.
Yeah, I might have had a little something to do with that. I had come across an article, and I wish I knew the name of it. It's linked to my website and this whole thing as well. And I don't know whether it was an April Fool's joke or not, okay? The article was published on April 1st, but the author of the article started attacking me, saying I wasn't giving them any credence or cred for actually coming up with this concept. And so I kind of believe that they weren't pretending or believing it was an April Fool's joke, because they went on for a while to storm on me, because I brought this up on Alex Jones and I showed the image live on Prison Planet, you know. And when you look at the depiction of Barbara and Aleister Crowley, you will absolutely see some familial connections. And then when you find out that most of these people are tied up in this OTO and tied up into these sex cult rituals, the fact that Barbara's mother, Pauline Pierce, who has ties to the gunpowder plot and such, well, familial ties, she is believed to be a follower, an avid follower of Aleister Crowley, and most likely went to France and performed a sex ritual with him there, coming back home to give birth to little Barbara, who could very much be the granddaughter of the Beast. And then, of course, she gave birth to the Beast W.
You know, it's crazy, especially, I live here in Texas. So, and I was a hardcore Bush supporter, both HW as well as W, and voted for him twice until I took the red pill, woke up and realized, oh boy, these guys are all Luciferians. They're all part of the same family. All presidents are related to each other. And they're related to King John Lackland, the signer of the Magna Carta, who just so happened to be the guy who created the Lord Mayor Parade, where every year they march the two huge statues of Gog and Magog, which are Nephilim giants, through the streets of England, even to this day. And then you realize that George H. was also known as Magog.
And Bush W was given the scroll of Gog.
Right, yeah. Oh, it's crazy. Well, we're about ready to go to another break, so we'll come back with Freeman Fly and talk more about this stuff.
Chris and Cherie Chio, Saturdays and Sundays on Truth Frequency Radio.
And we're back for the final half-hour segment of the Revolutionary Radio broadcast, Radio Project broadcast for tonight. I am your host, Rob Skiba, and we're talking with Freeman Fly. We've been talking about some pretty wild stuff regarding the presidents, and in particular, President Obama. Now, I want to kind of back up a little bit. Now, you've got him connected with Akhenaten, and yet, yes, in 2008, Anubis is traveling around with him. As he's making his rounds, Anubis is making his rounds, and Anubis, of course, being the god of the underworld, who was actually in charge of mummification and quizzing you when you died. When you went down to the underworld, you got a little quiz from Anubis to determine which direction you get sent. It's just kind of bizarre that he's the one in charge of mummification, and you have all these mummies being dug up, and History Channel, Discovery Channel talking about, hey, let's clone the pharaohs and stuff, and then your research is very compelling, I have to tell you. My wife is pretty convinced that he's a clone. I'm cautiously skeptical, but very, very interested in what you've done because, you look at the pictures and you're like, well, yeah. I mean, it looks pretty obvious. And then you have him going to Egypt. I think it was 2009, and everybody, the vendors and stuff, they're all making plaques saying that he's the new Tutankhamun of the world. And, I'm taking a step back and looking at that and saying, wait a minute, the pharaohs thought themselves to be gods, and they're calling this guy King Tut, who, yes, Akhenaten created a monotheistic religion, but then King Tut came in and basically undid everything his father did and created a polytheistic religion once again, and instituted the beginning of the New Kingdom dynasty. So why do you think that they're connecting him? You've got all these connections to Akhenaten, but why do you think the media is really trying to push King Tut on us?
At the time, I was honestly railing, just saying, "Oh my God, look, they're trying to discredit me. They're distracting everybody, pointing them in the wrong direction." Obviously, he's not Tut, who is the son-in-law of King of Akhenaten. And why would you even equate him to a child pharaoh? If you're going to pick a pharaoh, pick Akhenaten. I mean, really, or Ramses or something. But yeah, that was too much to sit there, knowing what I know, and to sit there and watch him go into the pyramids with Zahi and be shown a cartouche and have Barack himself say, "That looks like me." Right. I mean, it was just too much. And this one, of course, was one with big floppy ears. He's like, "Look at those ears." Obama's been just dropping some ones on me for sure with his whole I'm actually from Krypton and my father's Jor-El statements such as that. But from my perspective, I felt like I was getting marginalized, and really, I had expected this Obama clone thing to kind of take somewhat of a foothold, because it was at that moment, and I timed it with this, that Obama was coming forward to release the federal restrictions on funding to stem cell research, which of course opens the door to human cloning. And he clearly stated, human cloning for reproduction is dangerous, profoundly wrong, and should not be practiced in any nation. Now, I do have the history of human cloning on my website in this Obama article as well, as we've been tracking it through the time, all the way back to when Schwarzenegger was battling with W, saying that human cloning should be allowed. I knew that Obama was about to come up with this, but what I didn't realize was that the public weren't really informed on what is possible with this stem cell research and how much danger life had just turned when Obama made this new regulation to allow federal funding to go to the stem cell research. But then also Beyonce, who I say is Nefertiti, also went to the pyramids with Zahi, and she, of course, dressed in these ritual white robes and sang Ave Maria inside of the pyramids, to which Zahi came out and said, she is a very stupid person. It's mind-boggling, the things that we're seeing. Like you mentioned, the Temple to Zeus, the Pergamon, this going on, along with these connections to ancient Egypt. And, of course, you clearly see all of the ancient Egyptian connections to the elite, to the Freemasonic orders. And there's always Egyptian iconography utilized inside of these rituals. And there's actually a shrine to Akhenaten in every major Grand Lodge of Freemasonry that I have been to. And I've been to Australia, I've been to London, I've been to D.C., I've been to New York. And every one of them have a massive temple. Like the one in New York has 18 different temple rooms inside of this high-rise. And we filmed the movie Don Peyote inside of there, much to their dismay. And actually, none of that footage got into the movie because the Masons wouldn't allow it. I'm trying to get Dan Fogler to release the footage to me so that I can release it to you without fear of the Masons, because I don't really care. He cares more because he's a Disney star, and what's he going to do? But so we went in and we filmed in this massive Egyptian hall, and it's a massive shrine to Akhenaten, and hopefully we'll get the Don Peyote footage out there to you. You guys definitely go check out Don Peyote, because that's my first big Hollywood making it film. And Dan Fogler, who is known mostly by the movie Balls of Fury, the ping pong movie, decided to do his own breakaway movie utilizing the money that Walt Disney had paid him to make Mars Needs Moms, which is kind of a funny story in itself. But he used this to make a movie to hopefully reach a wider audience with these type of concepts, and interviewed hundreds of people, or maybe not hundreds, but he interviewed a lot of people to be in the movie as bringing the truth inside of the movie. And I was one of the characters that made it throughout the whole movie. And I feel like I kind of got the last statement in the movie, which I'll leave to you to see.
Cool. I'll have to check that out. Now, in your a lot of your work, I've seen you make commentary on the music industry. And of course, we were talking about Beyonce just a minute ago. What do you think is going on with the music industry? Because, I mean, it's getting worse and worse every year. Pick a music awards, whichever one that they're showing. It's just getting more and more satanic, more and more in your face, occultic in every way.
Yeah, I remember when I was blown away because Lady Gaga was performing a blood ritual under a burning angel on primetime television on American Idol, and I'm like, whoa, was it American? It was one of the primetime television shows, and here she is doing this blood ritual. And when I started back in the kooky days of Britney Spears and talking about trauma-based mind control and the ideas of Kabbalah and Madonna becoming Esther and getting away from her musical career and becoming more of a high priestess of Kabbalah, passing her Madonna ship onto Britney Spears, who then had a total meltdown, shaved her head. And, of course, you can see the name of God tattooed in the back of Britney's hair, back of her head, and you can see her Star David necklace, her Kabbalah red bracelet, and all of this as she's in Esther's hair salon, which I think was just a coincidence, but shaving off her head, saying, I don't want them touching me anymore, I don't want them plugging me in. This was like the kindergarten days of trauma-based mind control coming to the surface. And, of course, if you watch Britney's videos, you're going to see a lot of crazy stuff where she destroys her own clone lab, and she's always fighting these men in black. She has demons that are being her handler and stuff. And then in the background, she's talking about time travel and Dan Aykroyd's witnessing Men in Black as he's talking to Britney on the phone, things like this. But now it's just, oh my God. And of course, what you got to realize is each and every one of these has been raised through the Walt Disney Company. And I rally about Walt Disney Company and how evil they are over and over again, and that's a whole nother show. But what you'll see is each of these stars is being brought up through what I believe is trauma-based mind control rituals that are then opening them to these astral beings, demons, and then they're using full-on magic in front of us. So to the point that when Madonna came and gave her 33-minute sermon, as she called it, at the Super Bowl, she clearly displayed the satanic version of the Mark of the Beast. Now, most people don't know, and because I study the works of the Satanists and I study the works of the Ordo Templi Orientis, which is the Aleister Crowley's sex ritual group that really have the hold on our music scene. So realize the Beatles were OTO fans, that Led Zeppelin were huge OTO fans, to the point that Jimmy Page moved into Aleister Crowley's Loch Ness home, David Bowie, and the list goes on, and you find this come rising up. So if you were to study the works of Kenneth Grant, who was the acolyte of Aleister Crowley, who took over the OTO after Crowley's death, Kenneth Grant says that there is this mark, which is the mark of the beast that we know of, and it is this O and the X. Now, that is the X-Men logo. It is exactly the X-Men logo, and this is the heart of the sigil of Nodens, and Nodens is this beast that lives in the abyss, and the abyss is this hidden node known as Da'ath on the Tree of Life. And it's symbolized by this O and X, and it's also symbolized by the number 66, which is how I predicted W, because in Hebrew, the letter V is 6. So, like Hitler's Volkswagen, he has 3 V's, but it's 2 V's interlaced, and you have 666 in the VW logo. He was also into the same ritual magic theosophy and such. But there's Madonna coming out on stage, and lo and behold, if right in the center of the stage she didn't blazingly show this mark of the beast and interweave it with the 2 V's, and I'm thinking, oh my God, my fans are going to freak out. Because here it is, right in front of you. I've been trying to tell you that this is their sign, their mark of the beast. And now I find it all over the place as I'm watching. Well, as soon as I made this presentation, Macintosh announced their new operating system, which was the OX10, which turned out to, or the OS10, which turned out to be OX as their corporate logo. Beyonce came out with XO, which was just another break on this entire thing, and it had the Challenger destruction in the intro of the song. Then they put out Michael Jackson's Posthumous album, which also had the X and O logo on it, and they're constantly using Michael Jackson in this symbolism, and you'll see a lot of that with him. So now we're to the point where it is just part of the culture that it's coming straight to you, satanic rituals over and over again. The most recent one I just witnessed was Ariana Grande and her video called Break Free. and I just put this up in my weird video section, that she shows herself coming out, destroying the Masonic compass and square, or at least a similar Masonic compass and square symbol. She destroys this right at the beginning, and then she starts going around killing reptilian monsters who have all the humans in cages. And before the video begins, they say this is scientific fact, and they have this whole thing about, and then the video begins, and to the point where she's wearing the Kabbalah bracelet, the red band like you see Britney wearing when she commits suicide in that video of hers, and she's Ariana Grande in Break Free has torn down the Masonic logo and then ripped off the Tree of Life, the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, off of this evil sorcerer, cast him into hell, and then takes that Tree of Life and plants it into her spaceship and flies into intergalactic realms. Now, this is yet another Nickelodeon and Disney star coming to the surface. We, of course, were on Miley Cyrus way back in the day, in the Hannah Montana days, covering this way back before she became Miley Cyrus. And she, of course, came out with a less, but just as connected symbol, because Kali is the representation of the Scarlet Woman within the OTO. And when you started seeing all these pictures of Miley Cyrus and, of course, her horrible video display of twerking, she's constantly sticking out her tongue. Yeah. And you can clearly see that she is invoking Kali, which is the Scarlet Woman or the Woman of the Beast in the OTO lodges. So it's right there in front of us over and over and over again. And it all comes straight up through Walt Disney Code.
Now, Walt Disney seemed to have been following a Crowleyan philosophy, though, right? I mean, Crowley talked about children needing to see as many acts of sexual perversion as possible in their early years, and Disney is the one that did it, right? Yeah,
absolutely. He separated the children from the parents, and the subtleties of their sociological engineering, their social engineering, have really taken over the planet to the point that people don't even realize how much they've been programmed. It was Donald Duck that got everybody to pay their income taxes. It was the greatest campaign of propaganda ever to unfold, to the point that Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propagandist, adopted Walt Disney's methods and techniques to program the Nazi youth, and not the other way around.
Wow.
They brag about this. You can get Disney on the front lines and watch all of the Disney wartime propaganda, and they come straight out and say that Joseph Goebbels admired Walt Disney and his methods of control, and they tell you this very thing that I'm telling you now.
It's sick. I mean, it really is when you realize how deep we are into all this stuff. I mean, it's like everywhere you look. Wow. Now, we got 10 minutes left. I want to make sure we give a little bit of time to talk about your weird stuff. What's that all about?
Oh, yeah. Well, we felt like there needed to be more tools out there for people to share. As we traveled around, and actually Weird Stuff has been in production for about 4 years, but as we traveled around, we found that the most common thing we heard from people is, I have no one to talk to about this stuff. And so we really tried to start to bring people together and give them people around them to talk to. But what we designed was an encyclopedia of the occult that really starts right at the ground floor. My wife Jamie did most of the writing. I just threw in a couple of chapters at the end about the Sandy Hook and the Aurora shootings, because those were critical at that moment. But so it starts right at the ground floor. Weird Stuff, Operation Culture Creation. We have part 1, 2 out now, and part 3 on its way. And what this does is gives you a tool that you can share with your friends. It's designed so it can be flipped open at any point. It's full color so that it gets their attention. It has all the icons in there, like Lady Gaga and Britney and more, and Walt Disney, of course, and his entire hidden history. Oh my God, the life of Walt Disney is written in there as best as we could. We have every every biography on Disney, and he's as hard to figure out where he came from as Hitler, but he So Weird Stuff is a book that has been designed for you as a tool to open your friends' minds so that they can just flip through it whenever they're bored and find a sentence, find whatever, and it's going to trigger a conversation. There's just no doubt about it. So we're very proud of it. We've a lot of work. People are always shocked at how well and how good Weird Stuff is. They don't expect that we're perfectionists over here, so it has been honed. I'll tell you that much. And I did all the artwork and all of that layout and such for it, and I'm really proud of Weird Stuff. I highly recommend it. Go to FreemanTV.com and pick yourself up a copy because you'll love it. I promise.
Excellent. So is that your primary website, Freeman TV?
Yeah, FreemanTV.com, believe it or not, has been my website for 7 years. And for some odd reason, I guess because I go through everybody else's networks, no one ever seems to know that I have a website. But yeah, it's everything I've ever done is there. There's over 12,000 hours of video and audio and guests and everything on there for free. I've now started a members section to FreemanTV.com because I have to make it at this if I want to do more. So I'm hoping people will come and subscribe and help support the new shows that I'm making, some new television shows that are going to be just epic. I'm so excited to get to work on all of this. Right on.
In your quest for finding weird stuff, have you ever stumbled on anything on the Black Knight satellite?
I have, and the next portion, so the first portion of Weird Stuff is Operation Culture Creation, parts 1, 2, and 3. And following this, we will have Weird Stuff, The Sorcerers of Atlantis. And this is going to start all the way back to the days of the ideas of the sorcerers of Atlantis disrupting and confusing the natural sciences to use it for control. And this will get deeper and deeper into this space war and even what possibly could have been an ancient space war. So I'm sure we'll find a way to work the Black Knight into that, because that one, along with the monolith on Phobos, as Buzz Aldrin's running around talking about, and a lot of that high strangeness, even Iapetus and its connection. How much did George Lucas know? I mean, currently they just found the Millennium Falcon, they found C-3PO's head on Mars, and then the Death Star orbiting Saturn. What did Lucas know? There's so much that came out of Star Wars to the point that he says, execute Order 66. And this was another shocking moment for me as I knew the meaning of 66. And this was when everybody turned on all of the Jedi and the cloned warriors had been pre-programmed to kill all of the good people upon Order 66, which of course was W.
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, it's crazy. And Iapetus is one of those moons like our moon that always faces us, so we can never see the other side of it. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until, I want to say it was about 2006 or something like that the Cassini space probe finally made it around the other side, took a picture of it, and it's the Death Star.
It is.
I mean, it's got a 60,000-foot high wall that goes across its equator with a big old crater right above it, strategically placed in basically the same location as the planet-destroying weapon of the Death Star.
Yeah.
You're like, and I don't remember what year it was, the Klerksdorp spheres were found in Africa, in South Africa, but, I mean, same thing. I mean, here these guys are digging around in this cave or whatever, mining for something, and they find all these, I guess they're metal, I don't remember what, if they're, or stone or whatever, but there's all these spheres that are carved to look just like the Death Star. It's like, what?
Yeah. What did he know? That Lucas is a curious puzzle I would like to dig more into.
Yeah, I don't know how much that these people know in advance, or if they're channeling, or if they're just tapping into, what the Greeks call the muse.
Right.
Like, I can tell you, when I'm in creative writing mode, I just see stuff, and I write it, and then it's really uncanny how so much of it begins to manifest. It's crazy. I was writing a script about cloning Jesus back in 19 it was 97, somewhere between 97 and 99. I was writing this script, and I was actually doing it in the parking lot of Mel's Diner on Sunset Boulevard, where they have pictures of George Lucas everywhere. It was sort of like my, I went in there to get supercharged. I was like, ugh. So I was writing it, and I was pitching studios all weekend, and I had parked somewhere around the Kodak Theater. And I pulled out of the parking garage after I had just pitched it to the studio that made, one of the production studios that made Close Encounters. And as I'm pulling out of the parking lot, I look to my left, and there's a green dumpster that somebody had spray painted in yellow spray paint, Clone Jesus. And I'm like, it's just, it's weird. So, I wasn't like out channeling or doing anything. I was just, writing creatively. But yet stuff was happening, and I've talked to other creative writers that I guess we just tap into the zone.
I think so. I'm pretty sure that Clive Barker stole one of my book ideas. I have the layout for the book in my hand, and yet it was written by Clive Barker. So I felt like that was absolutely stolen from me.
Yeah, well, I mean that does exist too. That's why we have copyright and stuff to try to,
No, I meant from the ether though. He
just pulled it out.
Yeah, it was the same story. Same.
Well, I actually kind of believe that there's like a signal that goes out, and whoever's tuned in and is the quickest gets it.
Right.
Because how many movies and stuff do you see come out that they're like exactly the same, but whoever has the most money, the most power, gets it out first, and the other ones end up a blockbuster, on the B-list shelf. But
yeah, I definitely have found that my research has worked in that way. It's been more of a massive coincidence, to over and over again. It just blows me away when like the Apophis thing unfolding and just how the story has driven itself. I'm not writing it.
Yeah, no, that video that you sent to me, how do people get a hold of that? You sent me a password protected deal, but Aliens from Hell?
Yeah, I do have 7 DVDs right now, starting with the occult meanings of corporate logos and getting into Columbia. And I was actually the very first expert on Columbia on the internet. I couldn't find another anyway. I looked and looked. So, again, this was 2005. So I have 7 DVDs going from the occult corporate logos to Anna Nicole, Brittany, and Mind Control. Codex Magica, which gets into hand signs and gestures of the Illuminati and the elite and explains them more and shows them off more with Tex Mars. That was really good. Return of the Nephilim, which was probably one that came to your attention, which was just kind of a fun one for me. But just kind of laying out some of the connections here to ethereal beings and otherworldly beings to extraterrestrials and how that worked. Then E.T. and the transhumanist agenda, which that really gets into all of the transhumanist stuff, but also these New World Order global capitals and the magic inside of transhumanism. And then finally, Aliens from Hell. That's just about.
Wow. Well, great show, man. Thank you so much for coming on, and we'll have to do this again sometime for sure.
Absolutely. I can't wait.
All right. That's all we have for tonight. Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Radio Broadcast.